Adam, how does that happen, man? Jalen Brunson scores the first five. They end up losing by five at OT. What I feel like in the old NBA, something like that would never happen. Like if a team scores the
Yeah,
first five, it's like the game would be over.
I know. That's the new era we're in. You're never out of it. But this was, man, because we're recording this like 10 seconds after that game ended. I think both teams blew it. The
Mm.
Sixers blew it, then the Knicks blew it, man. That was a tough watch.
Yeah, it surely was. But I brought you here to talk Denver Nuggets basketball, Lakers basketball. What'd you learn about the Nuggets in the series?
A couple things, some good, some bad. I'll start with the bad. The Nuggets last year were afforded the opportunity to walk to the finish line because they were so far ahead in the standings. This year they had to sprint to the finish line, and they look it. They look tired. You know, Jamal Murray is banged up. He's got the calf strain. KCP rolled an ankle. Reggie Jackson was in crutches, and Jokic just looks a little bit more tired than he was. So I think number one is Denver doesn't look as fresh as they did last year in the opening rounds. And I think that's a big part of it. And then I would say the other bad thing is Denver's bench clearly did not have the trust of Michael Malone throughout this series. And as it went on, they played their bench fewer and fewer minutes, their starters more and more. So those are the two concerning things I would say that came out around one with regards to Denver's chances.
Are you more or less optimistic that we are in the midst of a new Denver Nuggets dynasty?
I would say less because health. I mean, so much of this comes down. I will say this. I am supremely confident that the Nuggets, a fully healthy Nuggets team, can beat anybody in the NBA. I've seen them too many times win in the clutch, how they execute. Everybody knows their role, and they've got Jokic and Murray. But Murray being hobbled, that was not a good series for him, despite the fact that he had 2 game winners. It's weird to say because was incredible in 2 fourth quarters, but he shot 38, 39% for the series. Struggled to get by his guy. There was no blow bys for him in that series. And so those are two really important ingredients for Denver, for them reaching their peak. So unless he can learn how to play around this calf injury, or unless it gets significantly better, I would say my optimism has waned.
It's interesting because I don't know if you remember this. We recorded about 3 months ago, and I talked to you about MPJ and if he could be the guy, the X factor, the guy that unlocks this Denver Nuggets offense because he didn't have great shooting stretches during, last finals. And here we see it shooting 48% from three. How big was he in this series?
He was huge. And this is a good matchup for him. He's been good against the Lakers, really, going back even to last year's playoffs, but he was never as good as he was in this series. I mean, almost 50% on volume for three.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's the matchup. If you look at how the Lakers guarded Denver, it's very rare that a team will stick to one game plan on Jokic for an entire series. They hard doubled him. They quick doubled him. They didn't even wait for a dribble. They didn't hesitate. They just said, as soon as the ball goes in the post, send it and start rotating. Well, when you do that, you're going to leave some guys open on the weak side. And Denver did not shoot the ball well. Jamal Murray did not shoot the ball well. KCP did not shoot the ball well. But Mike was ready for those swings and those open shots. He got a lot of them in that series, and he knocked them, almost all of them, down.
What do you think about LeBron? All the news coming out, his comments, not wanting to talk about if he'll be back with the Lakers. It feels like the Lakers will run it back with AD and LeBron, right?
It does feel like it. Here's the thing, man. Combo, you know this. Last year, Nuggets beat them. They sweep them.
Yeah.
And LeBron retires or says, I'm thinking about it. And it becomes the headline for a week, and it's kind of an annoying story. LeBron James tweeted during, not only did he go to the podium and say, I'm not thinking about that, but then he tweeted tonight at halftime of the Knicks game saying, a lot of people are asking me, like, dude, leave it. You said your piece. Stay out of it. There's games going on. So I don't think about it. That's my answer. I don't think about it.
It does feel like, though, I know you might not, it feels like you don't want to stay on LeBron too much, but it feels like at this rate, he's going to be done mentally before he's done physically. Like, because he's still putting up crazy numbers. I mean, there's an argument he was better this year than last year, right?
He was in both series. I said this last year. He might have been the player that impressed me most between all 4 rounds that Denver played. I think he was the most impressive player Denver went against. And seeing him as and paying as close of attention as I was last year to him, I just was blown away by how good he was. And then this year, again, same thing. You expect a drop off. He was phenomenal. He'd put so much pressure on the defense, and then on the defensive end, he covers up so many mistakes. I mean, he has good regular seasons, very good regular seasons, but in the playoffs, I still think he might not be tier one because he was in a class all of his own for I don't know 15 years. He's not in a class all of his own, but he is capable of being the best player even with Jokic on the court. He's the capable of being the best player for any quarter, any half, and that's still impressive. So yeah, I was incredibly impressed with him.
Where do you think the Lakers could go from here? I mean, people are talking Trae Young. I thought Trae Young would be a great fit with the Spurs. There's reports the Spurs aren't really interested. Now I'm hearing the Spurs could be interested again. They're not close to it. I like the idea of Trae Young being paired with a lob threat, either if it's Wemby or AD. And I also feel like people are sleeping on Trae Young a little bit at this point. Like whenever you hear media or talking heads talking about Trae Young, there's like a little bit of a negative connotation when it comes to
Totally.
Trae. Do you feel like he could be the answer for this Lakers team?
No.
Mm,
Here's the thing I think about for the Lakers. The Warriors ushered in a new era of basketball. The volume
100%.
three-point shooting, the spacing, it was there. I'm not saying they invented it, but they certainly accelerated a process that was already beginning. Since that process, the players coming into the league and the players who were in the league and how they developed themselves, the skill sets are changing. The paint is more open, versatility is more important, teamwork is more important. I
Yes.
think I don't think the super team era is over, but I think that the every year change around the role players and try to catch lightning in a bottle. I think that era is likely done. You need to have 5, 6, 7 guys that can play within a system. And you look at the Thunder, they have an identity, a continuity, and a system. You look at the Nuggets, you look at the Timberwolves.
Yeah.
You know, there's all of your best team, Boston Celtics. I know they added some key pieces, but they've had a core in place for a while now. So I think all these teams trying to do 1 year like the Phoenix Suns, let's just try to throw some guys together and build the culture within 1 year. I think it's still possible, but you have to, it's such a small margin for error. And LeBron, especially, over the last 10 years or so, I don't think that he has um, shown the ability to maybe feel like the rosters that he is trying to assemble and working with his teams to try to assemble.
Oh.
They're not the teams that have that. It's, hey, let's get the 2 or 3 stars and then throw guys around. I just think that era is over with.
So you think what LeBron tries to build is an outdated version of what the NBA has become in a way, if that makes sense.
Because you need patience to build the other one and he doesn't have time. So some of this is like I've got to quickly let's put this guy and this guy together and then fill out the roster with some shooting. But let's look at this series for example as an example. Jokic can dominate any defense that you throw at him. But if you throw out the quick double and just say, we're going to put 2 bodies on you, the right play is to get the ball out of your hands. And now you're reliant on the chemistry and the continuity and everybody reading each other behind it to attack 4-on-3. Denver has that. These guys have been together for a long time. So even though you're limiting the offensive engine, that hub, that fulcrum that is Jokic, those guys have the ability to work together. I think that this is how the NBA works now. You can scheme for a great player. You can scheme for a great duo, but you can't scheme for a great connected team. And I think LeBron, because he's out of time, what pieces on this roster make up part of a greater team? I don't think there are, besides Anthony Davis, I'm not sure there is that. So you're talking about bringing in all these new pieces and you're going to try to match Denver's chemistry in 1 year. You're going to try to match the chemistry of the Timberwolves and the
Yeah.
Thunder here. I just don't think it's possible.
That's what makes this next series for the Nuggets scary because it's not just Anthony Edwards and the rest of the Timberwolves, right? I mean, it's a system, it's a defensive system, it's an offensive system. Let me ask you this, Adam. What do the Wolves have to do to beat the Nuggets?
So the Wolves know Denver better than anybody in the NBA. Not only do they have Tim Conley at the helm, who, by the way, arrived and immediately started building for Denver. He was the prophet that knew what was coming. He said, look, everybody's sleeping on Denver. Once Murray is healthy, they are going to run the league, and everyone needs to start building for them. So he brought in Gobert. He extended Naz Reid. He got Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's a great Murray defender. Put him on Jamal Murray. He's really good pick-and-roll defender. So he's built a team that I think is capable, first of all, just in terms of personnel, of limiting Denver. A defender for Jokic, and obviously they're 3 centers, but you're really talking about Gobert as a help side defender, and then length and Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker on Murray. So they have a group that if you say, how do you beat Denver? Number one, you got to stop Jamal Murray and limit him even more than what the Lakers did. You've got to, Jaden McDaniels needs to make it difficult for Murray to score. Secondly, You've got to take away the pick and roll. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniels both are among the best in the league at not getting screened. They get skinny, they get into you, and when you try to run pick and roll, they just get around it. They're some of the best at that. So those guys have to avoid foul trouble and be effective at taking away Denver's pick and roll, which is the start of all of their offense. Everything spins off of that. So it starts there. And then I think the real question, because I think Minnesota can do those things and make life difficult for Denver. The question is, Denver can win a defensive battle too, as they've proven last year against the Miami Heat, even a little bit in this Lakers series. Some of these games were defensive games. Denver can win that way. So then the question becomes, can Minnesota score? If you're going to throw that defense on the court, unlike the Lakers, the Timberwolves are going to be playing two non-shooters a lot. Gobert's going to be on the court a lot, and then you're going to have a Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I know he made some open threes, but he's not a great three-point shooter. Jaden McDaniels, who is streaky. Kyle Anderson's going to play minutes. He's not a great shooter. They're going to have enough non-shooters on the court that they're going to have those guys make open shots to keep pace with Denver, even in a defensive battle.
So would you say this is their biggest threat, or you look at maybe the Mavs, the Clippers, OKC?
I think the Timberwolves are the biggest threat to Denver. I think they match up the best. They know them so well. I mean, these teams have played each other. I think Gobert is probably the single player who has played against Jokic the most, and vice versa. Jokic knows Gobert. You have not only do you have Chris Finch, the head coach, who, by the way, comes from Denver. He was there at the formation of the Jokic Murray two-man game. He knows them very well. He knows what they like and their tendencies. But Micah Nori spent even more series there, their lead assistant. He spent several years in Denver. He knows them very well. So this is a team that knows Denver. And I think that plus just the fact that they have their best defenders at the exact positions to guard Denver's best offensive players, it makes it the toughest matchup.
It's hard. It's really hard to lose to a team 4 times in a row. And I'm happy that the Lakers didn't get swept, but the Suns did get swept. And I was never high on their championship chances.
Yeah.
If you would have told me they would have got swept in the first round, I would have been a little bit surprised. Where do you think they go from here?
The Suns, to hell. I mean, I don't know. Like, honestly, I'm not even trying to joke here, but this is what I'm talking about with the super team and trying to throw things together. Chemistry, knowing your role, getting along. Jamal Murray talked about this after, I think it was game 2. He was saying, you can't replicate this. Like, I have so many life experiences with these guys because I've been with them for 7 years, in the case of Michael Porter and Nikola Jokic and Michael Malone.
I mean, Aaron Gordon got Jokic on a pod, so they have good chemistry.
Exactly. These guys have real, they've been in the foxhole in life and in basketball so many times that you can't replicate that. And you see that Phoenix Suns team when things started to fray, not even in the playoffs, before that, you start to saw, do these guys have each other's back? Are they rowing in the same direction? Are they all wanting the same thing out of this experience? And, so I think for me, I'm unimpressed with that Suns team. They had flaws that are basketball flaws, not having a point guard, not really having depth on the wings.
Rim runner, no rim runner, really.
No rim. They had holes in their team, but I think more than that, and you saw it immediately with the stories that started to leak. And by the way, these are stories anybody that's connected to the NBA had been hearing. Kevin Durant's not happy in his role. He's a little off ball more than he would like. As Bradley Beal, maybe he feels like he doesn't know where he fits in. Those things to me were so obvious and obviously coming for a team that was trying to speed up the process. And once adversity hit, they just folded.
And redundancy of their top 3 players, right? I mean, I've said this a lot in the pod. They're basically the same player, but Kevin Durant is 7 foot, and that makes him an all-time great.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. There's something to it. And then even if you think about last year, they struggled with the trap because, as I just talked about with Denver, you trap Jokic. Do the other guys know how to play 4-on-3 now before the scramble happens? Phoenix did not have that, not even close. So you saw that even this year where it wasn't that hard. You didn't have to be a genius to scheme to throw them out of rhythm because their rhythm was very easily disrupted.
So somebody I work with told me the numbers overrate Jokic, and then I asked them who's doing the rating. Maybe you're underrating him. I mean, we saw the Gilbert Arenas thing, worst MVP in the last 40 years, which is ridiculous because Steve Nash was an MVP. With all due respect, Harden was an MVP. Westbrook, and then he said it was multi-time MVP, but Nash is still a multi-time MVP. I mean, do you feel like Jokic still receives hate, even though he ran through the finals last year, and he's obviously the best player in the league, in my opinion?
You can find anything on the internet. You know what I mean? Like if you go looking for any take, you could find it on the internet. And so this is how I've always did. Yoke's never going to win over everybody. He just isn't. So the fact that there's a Gilbert Arenas out there, there's a Perkins, there's a whatever, you're never going to convince him. Skip Bayless is in year 22 of hating on LeBron James and talking about how overrated he is. Like you're never going to convince everyone. So for me, it's really, where do you put your mind? Where do you put your attention to? I'm such a busy guy that I don't spend a lot of time on forums or even on Twitter and stuff like that. When I see a tweet or I see a perspective on something that to me seems so absurd, I don't spend my time on it. I just keep it moving and go, hey, there's an opinion for everybody out there.
So are you of the belief that him and the next best player is a wide gap?
Yeah, I think so. And here's the thing about Jokic that's so interesting, and the thing about player rankings that's so interesting. There are players that are dominant, and you put them on any squad, and they're going to do what they do well. Kevin Durant is of this nature. Like he is such a scorer that it almost doesn't matter what role you give him or what team you give him. He's going to score and do that. Will it elevate the rest of the game or the rest of the team? Well, that depends on who's on your roster. Like if you have good players that are willing to fit around whatever system you create, then they're going to exploit it. Jokic to me is unique, even amongst the all-time greats, in how well he is able to mold his game around whoever's on the court. So this is why people have talked this year about Denver starters, but their bench or this or that. You give Jokic, Reggie Jackson, Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, and Justin Holiday, and he's going to create a great offense around it. Because it's like, okay, Holiday shoots, Peyton Watson's going to slash, I'm going to put Christian Brown on the dunker, and me and Reggie are going to run pick and roll. And Reggie they're going to go under the screen on him because they're not worried of this, so I got to set the screen a little bit lower. Like he just has everything in his bag to know how to bring out the best in everyone. So I say that to say that's what sets Yoke apart. And when you watch him, I think one of the reasons people don't always see it with him is they're expecting greatness to be score in this position, hit this type of shot. But what it really is he can look at any player and say, here's how me and you add up to more than the sum of our parts. And it doesn't matter what player that is that you pair him with. He finds a way to make it work. He can play on the block. He can play at the top of the key. He can play on the elbows. He can ball handle and pick and roll. He could screen and pick and roll. So whatever talent you have, he just channels whatever talent he has that fits with that. And in that way, it elevates your floor so high as a team. And it's what, in my opinion, makes him an all-time great.
You told me last episode you felt like his GOAT window is still open.
I mean, I still think it is. Look, and you know what's funny? Here's what's funny, Combo. Like when you say GOAT window, like people are saying, are you saying he's going to become the GOAT? You have to not only be great because there's been a lot of great players. Like Tracy McGrady, to me, there's an alternate world where he could have finished as a top 10 player all time.
Yeah.
He didn't do it. And part of the reason he didn't do it was you have opportunities. Do you take advantage of them? If not, window passes you by. Jokic's window is still open, but even if you lose this year, like that window closes a lot. Like the clock's ticking in terms of like every time you come up short, the rings come off the table now. But for Yoke, I saw George Karl tweet this out the other day saying, hey, I think this guy really does have GOAT potential. I saw Nate Jones, very respected basketball Twitter personality, put it out there. You've seen Akeem Olajuwon give the take. You've seen a lot of great Larry Bird. There's all these people out there that say, hey man, let's just keep the door open. I'm not saying he is that, but it's his time now. The window's open for him, and let's see if he comes up big in those moments, because that's what separates great players. Did you come up big in those rare, very, very, very few opportunities you get to succeed?
It's interesting because I feel like his GOAT window is more open in the face of the league window when it comes to like Wemby and Anthony Edwards. Like he don't want to be any part of that, you know?
He's hard to sell in some ways because, like I'm saying right now, it's easy to sell a guy that hits turnaround jumpers. It's easy to sell a guy that dunks on you. It's so overwhelming. But a guy that creates a two-man game with Justin Holiday, that's not the easiest sell, right? Like, okay, what is it? Oh, he's making Justin Holiday, who hasn't been an NBA player for 5 years. He's making him a positive impact playoff player, you know, against LeBron James. That's abstract. So I'm with you. I don't know that he's going to be the face of the league. Although I will say this, he's doing commercials.
He is.
He shows up in dressed as Gru in a costume. He shows up to a game in costume. He's becoming marketable. I think he's significantly more marketable than most people think, but we all know that it's hard to sell the league as a big man. Tim Duncan, Akeem Olajuwon, sure, even Shaquille O'Neal, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
But
those guys always had somebody else that was the face, and they, even when they were the most dominant player, somebody else was the face.
He's so different than I don't know if this changes the discussion for the face, but he's so different than them because he's like a point guard and a center at the same time.
I don't know, but it's relatability, I think, is
Right.
what it is. And this is why LeBron James, even like Kobe Bryant, did things that you could go in your hoop down at the park and you could try his footwork. You could try it. It's not going to look as good. You're not going to make it like he made it, but you could at least mimic it.
Yeah.
LeBron, you can't mimic. And honestly, Jokic, you can't mimic. He's 7 feet, 290 pounds. Like you could, nobody's out there just trying to practice the passes that he does. You have to have the whole package, and nobody really has that package.
Yeah, I mean, like even if you look back at Michael Jordan, right? It's like Mike, if I could be
Yep.
like Mike, you could try the reverse layups and you
You're
could try the
trying it.
fadeaways, but
It
it'll
feels cool. It doesn't look cool, but it felt cool to do those things.
so when we're looking at the East, how much does Porzingis injury change things? Do you feel like they would still be the toughest out for Denver if Denver does make it all the way, or like you're looking at a Knicks team? I mean, the Bucks seem like they're totally out of it at this point. Indiana Pacers have some good offense. Like, what are your thoughts there when it comes to the toughest matchup for Denver?
I mean, you're looking at Boston or New York. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty clear one of those two teams will come out of the East. Probably Boston. Boston is an interesting one because they've dominated all year. They're so hard to guard, and they do things that, obviously create blowout wins. I don't think you're going to blow Denver out a whole lot, which means
Mm,
you're going to have to win in the clutch. And there's just nobody. If you were saying, I think it can get overstated because Boston hasn't played that much in the clutch, but they haven't looked good when they've been in the clutch. But I think it's going to be overstated. But when you're talking about a team who that's the question mark, going up against a team in Denver that is just one of the greatest clutch teams of all time,
they are.
I think it's fair at least to say that's an advantage, not just a stylistic advantage, but a psychological one. Let's say you go to game one in Boston, it's a close game, and in the clutch, Denver outperforms you in the clutch in game one. Psychologically, there's something there that goes, that's their strength, that's our weakness, and they just won. Like they beat us in the regular season both times that way, and now in the playoffs you beat them. So I think there is a psychological edge that Denver could have, but more than anything, they're going to have to make shots. They're very good at it. Jokic is going to have to score on two guys he has historically dominated, and Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis. I'm going to take him dominating at the rim and in the paint more than I'm going to take that team shooting and being comfortable there. And I'm going to take Denver in the clutch over Boston in the clutch.
We started with the Lakers and we could end it with the Lakers, at least Denver's performance versus the Lakers. Last year, it was a sweep. And the joke was it was the closest sweep ever. And this year, it's a gentleman's sweep. And, a lot of the games are close. So what makes Denver so lethal in the clutch outside of just having Jokic and Jamal Murray?
Everybody knows exactly what they're doing and all the pieces fit. I mean, we have 2 years of data on this because I know all the quants, all the analytics people like to look at it and say clutch is random. It's such small sample size. What happens in the clutch? It's a make or miss league, and don't read too much into it. 2 years of data and me watching this team for even beyond that. If a game is close, they execute. They get
Hmm.
great shots every single time, and they know exactly, no matter what defense you throw at them, they know exactly how to audible on the fly. Most teams have to look at a defense. Okay, they're doing this, they're doing a gimmick, they're trapping here, they're sending the double from here, whatever it is, and maybe you call a timeout and let's diagram. Denver, you saw last night, both game 2 and game 5, those were game winners without a timeout. And why weren't they a timeout? Because Denver knows, oh, this is how they're going to guard. Who's guarding who? Okay, cool. You go here, you go here. We're running this action, and we know. And even I had, with Legler on my show today, he pointed out a great detail that really hammers this home. 10 seconds left. Murray's got the ball on the right wing. They clear out the side. So instead of putting a shooter in each corner, they empty one side. We're going to run the side pick and roll, put Aaron Gordon in the dunker spot. AD tries to jam Jokic at the 3-point line. He tries to push him up so that screen is as high as possible. He's trying to get physical, leans on him. He actually even puts his arm around him. And it also indicated that he was going to trap Murray, jump out at Murray on that pick and roll. So you're going to push the screen as high as possible, trap Murray 30 feet from the basket so that now, the ball's so far from the rim and do you have time even to attack and exploit? Jokic, understanding that, because again, he's done a million reps in the clutch, he fakes a backdoor on Anthony Davis, kind of swim moves him and pushes him back. Anthony Davis gives back about 5 feet, and now Jokic can go set the screen where Anthony Davis has to play drop because he just thought he was getting backdoored. So that's a little thing where Anthony Davis rightfully said, I can't let them set the screen too low. I've got to be up on it. Jokic knew he was trying to do that and countered him, got him to drop off, and then set the screen. It's subtle little things like that. Most teams would have to diagram that or think about it or just not recognize it in real time, and all of a sudden the screen's too far. With Denver, every detail is perfect, and no matter what you do, Denver knows, oh, here's the counter to that, and they just do it in real time without a timeout, and they end up getting Jamal Murray, who was red hot in the fourth quarter. They get him a fairly wide open 10-foot jumper, which if every team could guarantee their best shooter gets a wide open 10-foot jumper in the clutch, they would take it. Denver gets it every time.
How much of this is because of Coach Malone, and how much of this is because of the personnel from your standpoint?
I think in this instance, and Michael Malone has his fingerprints all over the team. In this instance, it's his best trait is his willingness to stay out of the way. He knows that this team has been doing this. And that's why he even joked about this after the game. He said, they asked him, why didn't you call a timeout? He said, we have the best two-man game in the world. I just let them do their thing. And it's like, hey, that's exactly the right thing. So with Malone in the early days, he helped form that chemistry. But I think at this point, Jokic is Tom Brady. He's Peyton Manning out there. If you're a coach, you don't need to call a timeout and drop a play. Those guys are seeing the field. Let them cook.
Yeah, I guess what makes a great coach makes a great podcaster. You got to let the guests cook. You got to let your team cook, right?
There you go.
Adam, great stuff. You're always welcome back on the show. Where can we find you? You're so many places, so we need to know.
All over the place, but All NBA with me and Tim Legler. We have 4 times a week. I've been enjoying that one. Legs is the best. And then if you like Nugget stuff, check out DNVR. Both of those shows, DNVR Nuggets and All NBA on YouTube.
Always great talking basketball with you, Adam. Talk soon.
Talk soon.